just a little commentary here. I usually space these tacks about an inch apart, and then there's about it takes about 8 to 10 tacks to close up the gap. So that's about 8 to 10 passes around the entire panel. In between each time I weld this up, I have to go back and I have to grind all of these little tacks off, and I use these little Rolock discs here. This panel here is taking me about 2 discs per pass. So that's, when I'm done here, I'll have used about 20 to 25 discs, which is about a box, which is about $30 worth of discs. These little guys right here. So just one of the most expensive things that people don't realize about doing a project like this is the abrasives. Anybody who's in the business of doing this kind of stuff is well aware of the cost of abrasives, and it doesn't pay to get cheap abrasives. They just don't work well. So I tend to stick with the name brand product, and it seems to be the better value for the dollar. Anyway, here you can see I've got the ring in for the gas hole now, and that piece of paper under there is the last little piece of steel I've got to cut out to finally patch this in. And then after I get done with this tediousness, which is taking quite a long time to get this all welded up, then I'll move on to the door jambs, and we'll go forward from there. One thing I like to say also about using these little discs, they're pretty expensive, so I want to make them last as long as possible, obviously. So what I'll do is when you're grinding down these tacks, it's nice to use the leading edge to get just a real fine grind, so you don't get way out into the metal and make it all wavy and everything. So it's nice to just be able to concentrate on just a tack and just take each tack down. But very quickly, the front leading edge will disappear, but you have lots of grit left into the field here. So what I do is, as long as it's proud of the surface, I'll try to flat grind it if I can, without hitting the surrounding metal, with the grit that's in the field here. And then at the very end, I'll roll it down to the edge and start to grind it just with the edge to clean it up that last little bit. That makes this edge last a little bit longer. Then the second thing I'll do is I'll take a pair of old shears, and I'll trim off just a little bit around the outside like this. And what that does is it presents a new edge, and I get a little bit more mileage out of the pad. And again, trying to use up the material, the abrasive material in the field by flat grinding as much as possible while it's still proud. And then once it gets real close to the surface, then I'll just lean in and use the edge. It's just a little tip I've learned, try to make these things last a little bit longer. Also, I have in the past, when welding these panels together, would just weld everything up ahead of time and then grind it off. Well, results of doing that, because all the welds are piled on each other, each tack is one's piled next to the other. It's not even, so when you go to weld it, it tends to have a very irregular surface when you're done. So I found it's just a little bit easier to go ahead while it's still an isolated tack to grind it down and clean it down. And it makes for a much cleaner surface, and you don't get into the adjoining metal as much trying to get the thing smooth. So you don't have thin metal, thick metal, and so forth. You're just addressing each tack and taking it down just to a minimum amount, and makes it a whole lot easier to deal with too. I think I may just be kidding myself, but it seems to take less abrasive to do that also. It doesn't overheat the panel by constantly going grinding back and forth. This was all weld here. You can see where you'd be going back and forth trying to get this all down. But that's just something that I have been doing, and it works for me. Everybody else has got pretty much their own techniques for doing all of this stuff. Some guys TIG weld this stuff together, and that really looks cool, but not one of my skills. Anyway, just another tip. Thanks. So it's been quite a while since I started this panel, but doing it all in a one straight go like this, as opposed to the other one I was doing a little bit of here and a little bit of there, and I realized how much time the whole welding up of the seams took if you go straight ahead. And this, I got probably about 16 to 20 hours. I lost track. I put about 6 hours a weekend in this. I spent about 3 weekends and some odd time just going back and forth, doing the welds every 1 inch, and then grinding them all off. And it's quite the pile of discs. And plus I've been trying to save on discs and using my mop disc over here on the electric grinder, get the most of the tack off, and then do the fine grinding with the small discs. Anyways, so I finally got this all zipped up over here. I might have to cut into this and push this in, because right now this is a little bit faceted here. There's a little high ridge right here on both of these areas here, because this is a flat plate, 2 round surfaces coming together, curved surfaces I should say. And right in here I got a little issue, but I'm going to take this panel off and kind of finish it up on some sawhorses, because this area right here, the more I welded it, the more it tried to butt cheek. So when I was grinding it, it was kind of making a concave. I can't get behind it to hammer it out, which is what I would want to do in order to just hammer it out and then continue to weld and keep it flat. It just continued to cave in, so I stopped welding on this one seam here. I've got to do that where I can reach behind it. And I got the side marker light in, got the housing fabricated, and also that's the shape doesn't, in this direction, doesn't exactly match. This is a pretty straight panel, believe it or not, from here to here, and this fits into the bumper of the Challenger, so it has a little curve to it. So working those two things together, again, I got to do it off the car where I get behind it and give it some hammer action. But you know, as I'm going along, little things occur to me, and you know, I'm going to have to put an access door in here to get to changing out the bulbs when I do finally make a closure in here for the inside of the quarter panel in that area. A guy made a suggestion I should put some storage in here, but it turns out there's a lot of goings on in here, and you know, this would be a kind of a, there's the license plate right there, so there's going to be less room in here than you would expect. It seems like a waste of space, but when I extend this out, you really can't do anything more with the existing. There's a seal around the existing trunk opening, and to customize it for a couple of inches doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's going to be kind of a waste of space behind this panel here when I get to that part of the car, which is a little bit way off. Decided to break up some of the monotony of welding, and so the skin, the perfectly good door skin, had to come off, and there it is, finally out of the way. Anybody want a souvenir? There it is over there. But I worked a little bit here on this jamb also. I have this little return flange here. It looks like it's one piece, but actually this half of this is attached to the quarter panel. The other half is attached to the car. Again, a little break from the welding and the grinding, and do something a little grunt work, as I say, to pacify the mind. And so anyway, while you know, you would think that with all this time off away from work, I would have had more progress on this, but I haven't been working on this any more than I would if I was going to work. Been doing a lot of home projects. I had the front porch of my house torn up, and then the fence blew down in a storm, and all kinds of goings on. So this I've been managing to just eke out about 6 hours a week on it. So progress is a little slow, and of course it's a little repetitive at this point because you've seen all this on the other side of the car. So that's where it sits right now, and there you go. So, better parting shot for this video. I had to fit up the wheels in the back to make sure I had clearance for the quarter panels in the rear, so I thought I'd give you a shot of the car as it's starting to look now. last remnants of the Challenger, which were indicated by the door panel, the flat door panel, are gone. So now the cues are starting to move more towards the end result here. And so far so good. Anyway, I thought I'd just leave you with this shot.